It was the late Rita Pearson, an educator, who said every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists they become the best they can possibly be. This Child Month and beyond, let us continue to be our children's champions. You're watching Jamaica Magazine. I'm Adrian Atkinson. On today's show, we take lessons from an exemplary father and talk about the role of the Financial Investigation Division. We'll be right back.
Some water with you, please.
Water gone.
But me need water for cook. So how me go wash?
Let's weather the drought. Start conservation measures today. Check for leaks around your house. Opt for shorter showers over long baths. Reuse water to water plants and lawn. Watch the amount of water you and your family use. Try cooking methods that don't require much water. And if you have a vehicle, avoid washing it regularly. Remember, water is as important as the air we breathe. So conserve our water, conserve our life.
Good day, I'm Theodore Henry, and this is your JIS News for Thursday, May 16. $3.5 million is being spent to implement an urban traffic management system in the Kingston metropolitan area this fiscal year. The Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica, National Works Agency, and the Ministry of Transport and Mining are collaborating on the project. The centrally controlled intelligence transportation system will include an integration platform for traffic monitoring, operation, planning, and modeling. It also involves traffic controllers, detectors, and other equipment to provide real-time traffic counts and patterns. Minister of Science, Energy and Technology, Favour Williams, made the announcement during her sectoral presentation in Parliament Tuesday.
Pretty soon, you won't have to idle your engines at traffic lights as long as you've been doing, which means more money in your pockets. The Urban Traffic Management System is expected to synchronize traffic lights across the Kingston metropolitan area. This is a US $3.5 million program on the PCJ's Energy and Efficiency Program and is expected to save thousands of barrels of oil.
Training will be provided for the National Works Agency employees who will be involved in the operation and maintenance of the system. Meanwhile, government is spending more than $1 billion this fiscal year to reduce the cost of electricity supply to the public sector. Major energy retrofits are slated for hospitals, schools, and other entities under the PCJ's Energy Management and Efficiency Program. Initial work is to begin on lighting upgrade projects at 50 public sector facilities, including 6 hospitals.
Among other things, the interventions at these institutions will improve the installation of energy-efficient lighting, solar photovoltaic technology, and solar water heating systems. These upgrades are expected to reduce collective electricity demand, which at current rates translates to more than $41 million in savings.
$11.4 million has been spent by the Universal Service Fund, USF, to establish a community access point at the Marvally Primary and Junior High School in St. Andrew. It was commissioned into service by Technology Minister Favour Williams on Wednesday. The computer lab is outfitted with 29 computers, desks, chairs, printers, air conditioning units, and other infrastructure. It will be opened on Saturdays to accommodate persons over the age of 50.
I want to applaud USF for the critical work that they're doing in extending the infrastructure to Jamaicans in unserved and underserved communities to have easy and reliable access to the internet. And they've done some good work in terms of the community access points that they've put in and the retrofitting with the solar energy systems.
The Marvally Primary and Junior High Community Access Point brings to 310 the number of computer labs established by the USF. In other news, Prime Minister Andrew Holness says government is examining all possible ways to increase access to potable water nationally. He told Parliament on Tuesday that this will be done by increasing storage as well as improving water generation, production and distribution. Pointing out that water works along the Hagley Park and Constant Spring roads are nearing completion, Prime Minister Holness says these upgraded transmission mains will provide more reliable water distribution.
With the works now underway, we are building the resilience of our water infrastructure. We are hoping that when the heavens open up and the rains do come, we will be in a better position to save this precious resource and to improve the conditions of our people.
The Prime Minister revealed that the National Water Commission was 28 million gallons below its daily distribution capacity for the corporate area and sections of St. Catherine. As a result, the state will be digging more wells on the eastern end of the island, building a new water catchment facility at the Hermitage Reservoir and conducting dredging at the Mona Dam. Phase 2 of the Yallas water supply system is also being reviewed to channel water to the Mona Reservoir from the Yallas and Swift rivers. And finally, applications are now open for the Hart Trust NTA's Graduate Work Experience program. Hart's Acting Senior Director of Community Service, Ronique Roden, says the program is targeting 500 graduates of tertiary institutions this year. Applicants should possess at least a National Vocational Qualification of Jamaica certification, Level 4 certification or associate degree from the Hart Trust NTA, or a bachelor's degree or equivalent certification from an accredited tertiary institution. The Graduate Work Experience program will place successful applicants within public and private sector entities for 6 months, paying them a fortnightly stipend of $19,100. Interested graduates are required to submit a completed application form along with proof of qualification, TRN, NIS number, birth certificate, any government-issued identification card or school ID, and one passport-sized photograph that's no more than 6 months old. The application process, which is ongoing throughout the year, is open to persons between 17 and 29 years of age and 17 to 34-year-old individuals living with disabilities. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching.
How much do you know about the Financial Investigation Division or its role? Not much? Well, Chief Technical Director Robin Sykes will bring us up to date on this unit.
Hello and welcome to Finance Matters, a production of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. I am your host, Daniel Pasley, and today we'll be focusing on the Financial Investigations Division. And here to speak to us about that division within the Ministry of Finance is Chief Technical Director of the FID, Mr. Robin Sykes. Thank you so much, Mr. Sykes, for coming on the program.
I'm very, very happy to be here.
Now, when we speak about the FID, what is its role?
Okay, the FID carries out a multitude of roles, but I think it can best be described as we seek to use the tools available to us under the Proceeds of Crimes Act and other legislation to A, gather intelligence, financial intelligence on persons who may be committing certain financial offenses, including money laundering, B, investigating those offenses and determining whether cases can be brought, and then using the special tools to bring applications to court, mainly in relation to asset recovery. And then finally, once those assets are recovered, another function is the management and disposal of those assets. So what we are seeking to do in a nutshell is really take the profit out of crime. So pursuing financial crime and getting the assets.
But I'm sure that there must be some collaboration with law enforcement, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We work very closely with the JCF, the Constabulary Force. We have 20 police officers who are actually stationed with us, and they carry out a lot of the criminal investigations. They are supported by our forensic examiners who carry out the financial analysis necessary to put banking records together to determine on A, whether criminal activity has taken place, and B, asset recovery. And then, of course, we have partnerships with wider law enforcement, major organized crime agency, for example, the Corruption Prevention Commission and the other agencies relating to corruption. So we have our working relationship with those domestic partners. And then finally, of course, overseas domestic partners such as the FBI, DHS, ICE, the Canadian authorities, as well as those from the UK.
So there is an efficient machinery working behind the scenes to ensure that, justice is served.
Well, it is a difficult task because we have a number of different matters that come up. I mean, persons rely on our services in different ways. So, for example, the police may want intelligence products from us. The banking sector needs guidance on how they fulfill their obligations under proceeds of crime. We are also responsible for some policy development in terms of the anti-money laundering framework, which is not just limited to law enforcement, but extends to a lot of areas such as terrorism, financing, and the role of charities. There's a lot of areas that we have tried to keep in the air in terms of juggling our responsibilities. And the bottom line is that we're trying to strengthen the framework, whether it's through the investigation and prosecution or in the policy development and changes to laws that are necessary.
So as it relates to the legislative framework, could you describe that a little bit more?
Sure. Our main tool in trade is the Proceeds of Crimes Act, which is the one that allows us to gather the financial intelligence from our financial institutions through their suspicious reporting obligations. It also gives us the powers for the investigative powers. So, for example, we can get production orders, we can get search warrants, we can get customer information orders from financial institutions. And this is what we use to gather our evidence. Then we can make certain applications to the court. We can make applications for post-conviction forfeiture. So if you are convicted of an offense and that offense is deemed to be one that is related to a criminal lifestyle, then we can recover assets from you based on the court's assessment of the benefit that you got on activity.
CTD Sykes, I am sure that our viewers learned quite a bit about the role of the FID. So I thank our special guest, CTD Sykes, CTD Robin Sykes of the FID, and I thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm Daniel Pasley. Have a great day.
Child Month is being celebrated under the theme Encourage, Enable and Include Me. And Richard McLean, a father of 4, demonstrates those words in the lives of his children, especially to his eldest child who has cerebral palsy.
I wanted us to be a very good father, a caring and loving father for my children. The reason why I really want to be that father is, I believe I want to be like somebody who I think that someone can emulate, so I try my endeavor best to be what I am today. That father with that courage and wisdom, to assist my children in all ways I can, just as good as I can.
Daddy plays a very important role in our life, right? So he's like a mentor to us and those things, because he set a very good example.
My father is a good father. He do what he can do for, and he work very hard for, and he would tell us what to do for him, and we would do it for him.
He works extremely hard. When I say extremely hard, I mean late hours, just to ensure that his children, they are happy, they are comfortable, You know, he is a person who will just encourage them. You see, if there are times when they feel let down, like at school, he will try and motivate them. He tells them at all times that they can make it. It doesn't matter what they can achieve. And he's very passionate about education, and therefore is that type of person who wants to see his children be the best they can be. We have some men who, because of their child challenges and all of that, they would deter. That is not Richard. He is so passionate about Richie. I don't know because of his challenges why he's so passionate about him, especially. He would go the extra mile to ensure that all appointments are filled, and he takes him to school in the morning.
As a father, when I acknowledge that my son having the problem that he had cerebral palsy, I was really sad. And I was sad, and then I began to pray, and get some strength. And my wife, she was crying, and I just have to encourage in the family. Richard have progressed thus far, and from where he's coming from. Remember, boy, when he was like in 6 months, when he was 5 years old. I have to lift him up, bring him to Mona Rehab. Today, I do not have to lift him again. He can walk, balance a little bit, much better by himself. So today I'm being a proud dad, seeing the progress that he's making through God.
He is not embarrassed about his son's challenges. He's proud of him. If you want to get him upset, try to belittle that child. To me, Richard sees Richard as a normal child. He does not see him with those challenges.
So how you feel now today, Richard?
I am bad, and I...
That's good, man. God has been giving the strength that, you can really cope. So you're coping in this situation, Richard?
Yeah, God grace.
With God's grace. Wonderful. We continue to pray, and our friend of ours to pray with us, and our church family would encourage us to hold the faith, and we continue to do it.
He's really a family man, and he loves his children dearly. It goes without saying, this man loves his children dearly.
He will get up in the mornings and prepare their breakfast. That's how dedicated he is. He will go the extra mile. It doesn't matter what it takes for him to let the family feel comfortable. That's the person you're looking at. And I really love him, and I appreciate him for that. I think God has given me the best man in the whole entire world. He is really a great father, and he's a great role model for his kids. Great role model. And because of that, especially Richard, he loves church.
My son is here to me.
I remember in his early days, I used to have to stop from work sometime or 3 times for the week to carry him to early stimulation, and then another 2 appointments at the Bustamante Hospital for the same week. I remember sometimes some of my man judge said, boy, I don't have a physically challenged child. I just want to take days off from the work just to do something else. But, because of my faithfulness to Richard, I believe this is why today he can help himself much better. Being that role model, as I would say to my children, I've lost my business. I've lost everything in the business. but we do not lose our faith in God. And I've continued working with my children. You know, it's rough days. You know, our finance has gone. You know, but I still hold courage and continue to give our children their support, because I told them they are not gonna live worse. They must live better. Despite of the burning down of the business, they must live better, because I've got confidence that God will not give us more than we can bear. And today I'm still holding my faith for better.
He is really a great father.
He's a supportive father, a hard-working, a dedicated father, and a committed father. You can always count on him anytime you need, you want him or any support. Thank you, Daddy, for being the best daddy in the whole world. I love you, Daddy!
I say be careful what you teach your little children. Make sure I know something to hurt them. Mind what you saying to my sister. She could be the next Prime Minister.
Children in Jamaica constitute anyone who is under the age of 18 years. And so once you have a child who is under your care and supervision, we encourage you at the Office of the Children's Advocate to always know where your children are. It doesn't mean that you have to be there with them, but you certainly know who they're with, where they're going, and the purpose for being there. This is a key component in helping to establish some rules in terms of some ground rules, and helping to guide your children towards responsible and sensible choices, and also assisting you if something were to go wrong to know what is the first point of contact to assist your child. While you're not to look at everybody as a potential suspect, that you need to be very wary of adults, whether they're in positions of authority or not, that seek to want to have a very close relationship with your child. Somebody who wants to invite your child on an outing and it's just that adult and your child alone. Somebody who wants to take your child to a very special event to reward the child, perhaps for some performance that the child would have done in an extracurricular activity or for academic excellence. We encourage you to look at these situations very carefully and to determine whether or not it's an appropriate meeting or outing that this person is propositioning for your child. If you're enrolling your child in a daycare, ensure that you know something about the track record of that daycare. Ensure that the daycare has what we call an open door policy, which allows you to go in, see what's happening, observe how the workers there interact with the children, and know some of the ground rules that guide these interactions. If they're going on outings, whether it be school trips or otherwise, ensure that at some point, even if you can't go to all, you do attend some of them, so you get yourself integrated into the system and the culture of the school. For these tips, and of course any other information that deals with children, that is anyone under 18 years, please feel free to contact the Office of the Children's Advocate. We're at 72 Harbour Street, downtown Kingston, and our numbers are 948-1134, or website www.oca.gov.jm.
Watch what you teach your little children. Make sure I know something to hurt them. Mind what you saying to my sister, cause she could be the next Prime Minister.
Recently, states of public emergency were imposed in Jamaica's most westerly parishes. Days after its implementation, we took to the streets to hear what residents think about the measure.
The state of emergency is a very good thing towards the parish, you understand, because most of the time you go out on the street, you're afraid to go around a certain place because you don't know if somebody are going to juke you off your bike or take away your bike. So knowing that I'm not about the place, I go out at night time, if I see somebody in a bush or a soldier, so I don't need to run go nowhere more than my top and declare myself.
I work in this area. I work in the grill at the hotel. I'm a tour operator own and operate. And, you know, at the end of the day, a safety we all look about.
I do feel safer. Yeah, man, it's a good thing, man. You know, them not to stop it, man, because, you know what I mean, once it stop, they go back to where areas is, and that no good. You understand? So we appreciate it, man. Definitely, man. Man, if you do them work, catch a criminal, them, sort out the thing proper. Yeah, for the country.
As a business person, the state of the emergency, the time I then give for like clubs and for restaurants, I think it should have been a little bit longer than a cut-off time. You understand? So, directly, they should have just give the business person a little length of time than the time that they give. For me, good for me. I think it's good for the community. So I don't really have a problem with it.
I feel very secure that somebody's taking care of us.
What I want is that people can go about their normal business, okay? All right? And the police do them work.
I welcome any initiative that can create some amount of change. It might not at the end of the day solve all the problems that we're having, but anything that can be used to minimize what's going on now, then I welcome it.
See, state of emergency, especially the road checkpoint, I don't see that necessary. Because you have 12 police, probably 6 police and 6 soldiers just lying there. Just when you reach down to them, they tell you to go. I think those soldiers and police should go in the committee.
I'm happy for the state of emergency. There was a big upsurge in crime, and you know, I feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that, you know, the police is out in full force.
I'm pleased with the return. You know, we really need it, especially with the business community coming under attack. I think that it is a move for right now. It is the best option.
It's a good feeling, and I do hope that we'll get some result from it. And in terms of some of the mishap that we had in the first one, I hope that measures are put in place so we don't have that in terms of, like, you know, the whole mixed reaction with some persons who are detained without any reason for it. So I do hope that that aspect of it is sorted out, but so far it is a good move.
This Labor Day, come out as a village and do what is necessary to ensure that our roads are safe for our children, but also to ensure that our children are able to have facilities for play and socialization within your communities. And generally, not just for children, but for everyone, come out and let's build a Jamaica that we can all be proud of.
As we close today's show, we ask that you stay connected via our website, jis.gov.jm. And while you're online, send your feedback to Jamaica Magazine at jis.gov.jm or message us on all the major social media platforms. On behalf of the entire production crew, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.